Made me train my replacement 3 hours after my father's funeral. That's how this starts. He died Tuesday, stroke, sudden, sharp. A man who could still split wood in January had collapsed face first into a sink of dirty dishes. I took 2 days off, just two. Friday morning, eyes swollen from sleep I didn't get, I walked into the lab and there she was, Nina. 23, probably couldn't spell firmware without Grammarly. She was sitting in my chair, smiling at my monitor like it had personally invited her in. Director said you'd show me how things run, she chirped. I'm your new shadow. I remember the coffee I was holding tasted like battery acid. I remember blinking, just blinking, not saying a word, then walking straight to the women's bathroom, locking the stall and dry heaving until my ribs stung. Let me rewind. 2 months earlier, I submitted a proposal, an inline compression algorithm that could slash data latency by 40% without any infrastructure overhaul. Proprietary logic. Clean, elegant, I called it Steno. I built it from scratch while still managing their backlog ticket queue and ghostwriting technical briefs that Doug, the director, would parade around like his own. When I asked for a raise to compensate for the hours, the IP, the actual revenue it would generate, he laughed. Said, "You should be thankful you're employed." I was. So thankful I went home that night, logged into a VPN and registered the domain stenoavo. I didn't sleep. I stripped my code from every company server, obfuscated, obscured, reseeded it into a sandbox that only I could access. I filed provisional patent paperwork the same weekend my cousin got married. Didn't RSVP. I was too busy surgically removing every fingerprint that tied Steno to their system. They didn't notice. Because Doug was too busy prepping for some investor dog and pony show. Because HR was too busy pretending burnout was a vibes issue and not the result of making one engineer do four people's jobs. Because no one actually read the lines of code I buried like diamonds in concrete. Now back to Nina. She was nice. Of course she was. That's how they do it. Pick someone shiny, agreeable, pretty in a way that disarms. I didn't hate her. I hated what she represented, the polite erasure of everything I'd bled into this company. She asked smart questions, wrote everything down. Doug passed by at one point and clapped her on the back like she'd invented gravity. Then he looked at me and said, "Knowledge transfers the mark of a team player, huh?" I smiled. Then I took a bathroom break, texted my attorney and said, "Go ahead. File it." Full patent, push the timeline. By the following Tuesday, StenoWave was fully incorporated, an LLC out of Delaware. Neutral branding, clean books. The licensing model was already designed, modular, competitive pricing, airtight EULA, all built under a different dev alias. I had clients lined up from a Discord of data pipeline nerds who didn't know or care about my day job. Then came the twist. Friday, Doug called an all hands, said we were pivoting, said we'd signed a contract with a third-party compression vendor to integrate their tech into our architecture, said it would transform our latency overhead, called it a miracle. I watched the presentation from the back of the room. Slide 4 had a diagram I'd drawn on a napkin in March. Slide 9 had my interface, palette, and all, and slide 14, the logo. StenoWave, he had no idea, not yet, because I'd sold the license through a shell firm with a generic procurement front, buried in a web of non-disclosures and pass-through contracts that even I could barely untangle. He signed on the dotted line for $250,000 per year. The budget exploded. Legal didn't blink. Finance called it strategic investment. Doug ended the presentation with a smug welcome to the new era. I nodded, smiled, walked out of the room, and opened the email from my lawyer confirming the final patent filing, under my full name, first and last, bold, right at the top. He was going to see it, soon. Doug saw my name the following Wednesday. It was 3:17 p.m. I know because I was rebooting a Jenkins instance and had 3 Slack pings from him in under 10 seconds, each more deranged than the last. The first was just my name, all caps, Ava. The second, "Come to my office now." And the third was just a screenshot of the patent filing with one line underlined in red, "Inventor, Ava Lucille Marin." I took my time, finished rebooting the pipeline, ran the deployment. Then I walked down the hallway slow, like the floor might collapse under the weight of my own satisfaction. Doug's office door was already open. He was pacing like a coked-up hyena in a men's warehouse suit. The veins on his neck looked like they were trying to escape. "You filed a patent. On company time?" I sat down, crossed my legs, calm, almost zen. "No, Doug, I filed it after hours on personal equipment, using personal funds. But thank you for noticing." He blinked like I'd spoken in Sanskrit. "You used our resources. That IP belongs to the company?" "Nope." I slid a folder onto his desk. "Your own infrastructure logs show no trace of the original algorithm. Not a commit, not a merge request. I've got notarized logs, timestamped Git repos, legal witness signatures. Want to fight it in court? Go ahead. But spoiler alert, I'll win." He didn't open the folder, just stared at it like it might explode. "This is sabotage," he hissed. "No," I said, leaning forward. "This is what it looks like when you tell the wrong woman to be grateful she has a job." He tried to pull the moral card, said I'd betrayed the company, said I was profiting off the team's back, that Nina was devastated. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. Which part upset her more, the fact that I built something from scratch or the fact that you were too lazy to notice? He didn't answer. Because Doug doesn't deal in facts, he deals in optics, and the optics were already bleeding. That night, the legal department emailed me requesting a clarification of ownership. I replied with a zip file. Inside, a 47-page declaration of independent development, voices for cloud services billed to my name, every line of code with creation timestamps from before the company ever laid eyes on Steno. I CC'd the COO. By Friday, the procurement team was in panic mode. I watched from across the office as they realized the licensing contract was locked. No refunds, no revokes, every clause airtight, every dollar already wired. And then it got worse. Because Monday morning, my shell company filed a press release. Stenowave was partnering with 3 other mid-size firms. Competitors, direct ones. Each contract pre-negotiated. Each license fee slightly discounted for early adoption. And suddenly Doug's miracle product wasn't so exclusive anymore. He called me again. This time I let it ring out because I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I had leverage, and he hadn't even seen the real trap yet. Doug started showing up earlier. That's how I knew he was scared. This is the man who used to roll in at 10:30 with oat milk lattes and that smug, post-yoga glow, like the universe owed him market share. Now he was here at 7:45, hair unwashed, shirt misbuttoned, trying to outpace a disaster that had already eaten his ankles. And it wasn't just him. Suddenly, the finance VP just happened to swing by my desk. HR wanted to touch base. Legal sent me a calendar invite with a subject line so vague it felt like a phishing scam. Check-in, company culture and compliance. I accepted, happily. The room smelled like nervous citrus and toner. 3 people on one side, legal, HR, and some external consultant they thought would scare me. Her name was Megan. She wore a power blazer and had the warmth of a vending machine. We've reviewed the timeline of events, she began, eyes darting over her notes like she didn't want to actually see them, and we're wondering if you'd be open to, let's say, redefining the nature of the Stenowave contract. I nodded, sure, they exhaled. Great, so $5 million flat buyout, I said. No licensing, no terms, just one check and I walk. The silence was so pure it felt holy. Legal blinked like he'd just been tasered. HR tried to recover with that corporate empathy voice, Ava, really hoping to avoid litigation and keep this collaborative. Oh, I'm being collaborative, I said. This is me helping you. Because if I really wanted to play hardball, I'd drop the next release publicly, open source the compression module, and obliterate every shred of your competitive advantage. But I won't. I smiled, because I'm a team player, remember? They didn't respond. Megan just adjusted her pen like she wanted to stab someone with it, probably me. I left the meeting and found Nina waiting outside. She looked like she'd just been told Santa Claus ran a Ponzi scheme. Did you really build that whole thing by yourself? She asked, voice hushed. I shrugged, in a hoodie, with a cat on my lap. You know, classic villain origin story. But why didn't you tell anyone? Would you have believed me? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, I uploaded version 2.0 of Stenowave to the licensee portal. Improved runtime by 12%. Cut server load by 18%. Added a back-end watermark system that could trace pirated forks. Then I posted a job listing. Stenowave is hiring, remote first, zero tolerance for corporate BS, must love clean code and revenge arcs. Applications flooded in. The trap was set, and Doug? He was about to make the one mistake every cornered man makes when his ego is louder than his instincts. Doug went to the board. Not officially, not with a slide deck or an executive memo. He slithered, whispered, pulled that greasy maneuver middle managers love when their empire's on fire, spinning failure as innovation. He pitched the whole thing like he discovered Stenowave, called it a disruptive partnership he personally championed, claimed I was brilliant but volatile, and that I lacked the emotional maturity for leadership. Funny. From the man whose greatest leadership move last quarter was buying the dev team 2 Costco cheesecakes after canceling bonuses. I found out because Angela, my one ally in finance, queen of Excel and bullshit detection, forwarded me an internal note. The subject line was, contingency planning, Avamarin exit, beneath it, bullet points. Pros, cons, risk assessments. My name dissected like a liability. Like a virus they couldn't contain, only pay off. Angela added one line, they're prepping your replacement again. Different title this time. Director of Systems Innovation. Thought you'd want to know. I didn't respond, not yet, because I had other plans. That same week, a junior engineer on Doug's team, Tommy, sweet kid, stress sweats through polos, accidentally pushed a corrupted dev build to staging. Took down half the testing environment. Instead of owning the error, Doug threw Tommy under the bus in front of the entire staff. Called it an unforced failure. Said some people just aren't cut out for scale. Tommy turned red, then gray, then just left. I followed him out. Found him in the parking garage, hands shaking over his steering wheel. You didn't crash the system, I said. He looked up, eyes glassy. How do you know? Because the module that failed wasn't yours. It was Stenowave v1.1, the version Doug forced into staging without proper QA. Wait, how do you? I built it, Tommy. Holy SH, listen, I said. You want a job? He stared at me. What kind of job? The kind where you don't get punished for doing your job right. That night, I onboarded him. Gave him admin credentials. Sent him a care package with a hoodie, noise-canceling headphones, and a handwritten note, you're not broken. The system is. Let's build a new one. By Friday, I had 3 more defectors, each one poached with surgical precision. Each one burned out, used up, and silently erased by the same machinery that tried to erase me. Doug didn't notice, because he was too busy trying to convince the board that I was unstable, that I was dangerous, that they needed to get ahead of the liability. So he scheduled a surprise performance review with HR and the board liaison. I walked in smiling, sat down, and before they could say a word, I slid a USB stick across the table. Doug blinked. "What is this? Your resignation letter," I said. "Excuse me?" "Open it." He did. It was a document, formatted in company letterhead. Dated, signed, with detailed notes about falsified contributions to Stenowave, misallocation of R&D funds, and breach of contract protocols. All traced, all time-stamped, all cross-referenced against metadata I'd archived from his own presentations. "You forged your involvement, Doug," I said. HR gasped. Board liaison went pale. And I added, "You authorized a license spend you didn't vet on technology you claim to have helped create without disclosing any conflict of interest." He stammered. This is blackmail." "No, Doug, this is a choice." I leaned in. "Take early retirement. Blame burnout, save face, or I go public with everything." Silence. Then the liaison spoke. "What's your timeline on disclosure?" I smiled. 4 hours. Doug didn't walk out of that room. He evaporated, and when the company newsletter announced his departure, it used his own words. "Some people just aren't cut out for scale." I framed it, hung it above my new desk, because I wasn't done yet, not even close. 3 days after Doug resigned, I got flowers. Not from him, obviously. His exit was so sudden, security had to fish his credentials out of the fourth-floor trash can and escort him off-site while he screamed about intellectual tyranny. No, these were from the board. A vase of orchids, white, sterile, like they'd Googled "congratulations for not suing us" and picked the first premium option. The card read, "Thank you for your continued innovation. Let's build something extraordinary together." Executive leadership. I left them on the receptionist's desk without a word, because by then I already knew the next move. Knew they weren't done. Knew the moment they couldn't control me with flattery or silence. I'd try something quieter, slicker, the kind of corporate warfare that doesn't come with screaming matches but with process realignment initiatives. And sure enough, Monday morning, the COO summoned me for vision sync. Her tone was all ice-dipped honey. She wore a blazer the color of wet concrete and didn't blink enough for mammal. "Ava," she purred, "you've clearly proven yourself. We want to empower your genius. Build a sandbox for your next ideas. We're creating a new position for you, executive technologist at large." I almost laughed. At large? What was I, a stray raccoon? "Let me guess," I said. "No direct reports, no budget authority, no seat at the table, just enough optics to make it look like you promoted me without actually giving me leverage?" She blinked once. Slowly. "We want you focused on what you do best. Creating." "Funny," I said. "What I do best is building empires, not feeding them." There it was, the first micro flinch. "We assumed you'd welcome this opportunity," she replied, cool tightening in her throat. "Assumptions are expensive," I said, "and I've built a business on underestimations like yours," and I left. By Thursday, I had moved my official desk to a co-working space downtown, a converted library, sunlight, quiet, no motivational posters with mountain peaks and dead-eyed taglines. Stenowave wasn't just growing, it was blooming. 14 companies had licensed the V2 module. 2 VCs had reached out. I turned them both down. I wasn't building a startup to chase Series B crumbs, I was building a lever, and I planned to use it. The last straw came that Friday. Angela, still deep inside the finance engine room, forwarded me a confidential strategy doc labeled Q4 Talent Optimization. Bullet point underlined in red, long-term reduction of license dependency, reverse engineer compression module in-house. ETA 6 to 9 months, so that was the game now. They were going to gut my invention, rebuild it from stolen pieces, phase out Stenowave like a bad habit and call it cost savings. But here's what they didn't know. Version 2.1, the one they were running, was incomplete by design. Not broken, not faulty, just missing something. Dependency chains so subtle it wouldn't trip until exactly 6 months in, when the data packets would start corrupting. Slowly, intermittently, ghost errors, inconsistencies they couldn't trace. And when they'd try to fix it, they'd see the signature, my signature, a line of obfuscated code that would ping a remote server. Mine, with one alert, unauthorized reconstruction detected. License violation logged. Because you don't build a cathedral and let the termites steal the blueprints. I sat back in my new chair, coffee in hand, sunlight on my face, and hit enter. The final release. Version 3.0. Immutable, protected, untouchable, and already bought by their competitor. The fuse was lit. Now I just had to watch. The first fire broke out 42 days later. Literally, one of their data centers in Utah suffered a thermal cascade because the patch they deployed, meant to stabilize packet flow, had bypassed the latency buffers I designed. Result? Memory stack overflow. Servers overheating like a gas station microwave trying to cook a Thanksgiving turkey. It made the news. Not front page, but enough to rattle their clients. I watched from my glass desk in the library co-working space, sipping jasmine tea while CNN ran a B-roll of smoke and confused engineers in hard hats. No one outside the company knew it was software-induced. No one yet, but inside? Oh, inside they were panicking. Angela texted me in all caps, they're holding a war room. Coos losing IT, legal thinks it's sabotage, it was, but not the kind they were used to. I hadn't touched their systems. I hadn't breached a contract. I hadn't even spoken to them in weeks. What I'd done was elegant. I'd designed the degradation, built it into the ecosystem like a self-destruct switch inside a golden egg. Not to break it, just to reveal who was trying to steal it. By the second week of outages, they were bleeding clients. By the third, two of their major enterprise accounts had jumped ship. To me, StenoWave v3.0, faster, leaner, more secure, and fully supported by a team that actually returned calls. They tried to hide it, of course. No one wants to admit they got outplayed by the woman they passed over for a raise. They told staff it was a third-party flaw. They blamed Amazon servers. They even floated the idea of ransomware, anything to avoid the truth, that they'd broken something they didn't understand. Because they didn't respect the person who built it. Then came the desperate reach out. An email from the CTO. Subject: Strategic Realignment Discussion Translation. Please come back and save us from our own stupidity. I didn't answer. He followed up with a call. I let it ring. Then a LinkedIn message from Nina. That one I read. Hey Ava, I know things got messy, but they're talking about shutting down the division. A lot of good people are going to lose their jobs. People you trained, just thought you should know. And I did. I knew every one of their names. I remembered who stayed late, who fixed bugs at 2 a.m., who cried in conference rooms after being gaslit by directors who couldn't write a for loop if their lives depended on it. They weren't the enemy, but they were still inside the burning building, so I gave them a door. I posted a message on StenoWave's internal portal. Former company name employees get priority interview slots. Your dignity is more valuable than your NDA. In 72 hours, I received 31 applications. By the end of the week, 12 were onboarded, and just like that, we weren't a team anymore. We were a rebellion, and rebellions don't ask for permission. They build alternatives. Then they watched the old empire choke on its own arrogance. And I still hadn't pulled the final lever. Not yet. The final lever was labeled audit, and they pulled it themselves. I didn't need to send a threat, didn't leak anything to the press. I just waited. Because corporate rot always floats to the surface when the money goes missing. And with their licensing revenue in freefall, clients defecting, and their in-house rebuild of StenoWave imploding like a soggy IKEA dresser, the board panicked. Cue the audit. It started as routine compliance. By week 2, forensic accountants were sifting through expense reports like raccoons in a dumpster fire. By week 3, whispers started. Fraud, double-billed contractor hours, consulting invoice from a shell company tied to, you guessed it, Doug. See, Doug hadn't really retired. He just rebranded. Started a sham firm called Edge Layer Consulting and billed them $27,000 a month for integration support. For tech he never built. Using access he wasn't legally supposed to have. And worse, the CTO signed off on it, so now it wasn't just a PR problem, it was federal. Angela messaged me, they're toast. DOJ might get involved. They're begging outside firms to make bids, fire sale. I booked a suite in Manhattan that night, told my assistant to schedule a lunch with the top partner at the firm handling the liquidation. And when we sat down, I slid a proposal across the table. Not to buy the company, to buy their infrastructure, their contracts, their pipeline clients, not the rot, just the bones. He looked over the figures, raised an eyebrow. You're lowballing them. Curing an infection, I said. They should pay me, he chuckled. Honestly, you'll probably get it, and I did. 7 days later, the acquisition cleared. For pennies on the dollar, StenoWave absorbed the last usable assets of the same company that once told me I should be grateful for a paycheck. They released a statement. In an effort to streamline and innovate, we're thrilled to announce a technology partnership with StenoWave Inc. No mention of the layoffs. No mention of the lawsuits. Certainly no mention of the woman who burned their future into a blueprint and walked away with the keys. But I didn't need credit. That morning, I stood in what used to be their executive conference room, now mine. I stared out over the skyline, the windows still bearing the ghost imprint of that stupid motivational vinyl. Success is a team sport. I sipped my espresso, then turned. The team was waiting. 32 engineers, 17 from the old company, 50 new hires from everywhere else corporate forgot to look. I looked them in the eye and said, let's build something no one can take from us. And they smiled like they already knew, we already had. 6 months later, I stood backstage at a tech conference in Berlin, wearing a midnight blazer and a smirk I didn't bother to hide. The screens were pulsing with the StenoWave logo. The main hall was packed, investors, press, competitors trying not to look like they cared. In front row, wearing borrowed smugness and borrowed suits, sat 2 execs from the new board of my former employer. I walked onstage to polite applause and a sea of people who didn't yet realize they were about to witness a funeral dressed as a product launch. Thank you, I said. Today, we're not just announcing a release. We're announcing the death of gatekeeping. Cue the lights, cue the demo. Version 4.0, real-time adaptive compression. Military-grade encryption baked in. Energy efficient. Self-healing. No bloat, no fluff, no room for corporate parasites to sink their teeth into. Open source, not a chance. This was built to be bulletproof. The crowd erupted, standing ovation, flashbulbs. I saw one of the execs whisper to the other, probably something desperate like, "Can we still license this?" Spoiler, no. After the conference, in a private lounge upstairs, a journalist from Tech Vault cornered me with a recorder already rolling. "Everyone's talking about your comeback," she said. "The patent war, the acquisition, the silent rebuild. Did you always know you'd win?" I laughed. "Win? I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to survive. They just made the mistake of giving me a motive." "And now?" she asked. "What motivates you now?" I glanced at my phone. 30 unread emails, 2 acquisition offers, 1 calendar invite from the White House's Office of Tech Strategy. "Now," I said, "now I build things that can't be stolen, teams that don't break, futures that don't come with disclaimers." She paused. "And if they come for you again?" I leaned in. "They won't. And if they do?" I already wrote that script. I left her there, blinking like she'd just interviewed a villain in a Marvel post-credit scene. Maybe I was, doesn't matter, because heroes don't survive corporate warfare. Only architects do. And I'd built the whole damn thing from ashes. Final ping that night came from Nina. Just a message. No ask, no angle, just this: "Thank you, you proved it's possible." I stared at it for a long time, then typed. It was never about proving it. It was about reminding them. And I slept easy. Because the company that once told me to be thankful for employment was now licensing the future from a woman who doesn't ask anymore. She charges. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.